Alright, hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another Helloo World tutorial. Today's topic is going to be functions, and we're going to be in C++ as always. So let's get started. So first things first, function is basically a body of code that you can execute a single task with, or function, as the name implies. Basically, if you write code without functions, you might notice that you're going to have some lines of code that you're going to be repeating, so it's kind of messy. It's a waste of space. So a function is a way to have those same lines of code, instead of having them in multiple areas, you can have them in one area and simply just call a function to execute the same task. So it's just cleaner and a good way to organize your code. So in C++, to start out with a function, you need to make a prototype, and I have this comment written out here at line 5. It's basically the declaration, I guess, of your function, and this is required. So a function has a multitude of things. It's going to have a return type. Okay, it's going to have the name of the function. Then it's going to have the parameters or arguments. So I can show you that right here. So for example, first, I'm going to have a function that returns nothing, so I'm just going to write void. If you want to have a function that returns nothing, the return type is void. If I wanted it to return like an integer value, then I would just type in int. Okay, so but for now, let's type in void. The name of the function, so we can make a function that adds 1 to a value. So I'm just going to name it add 1. A general rule is to have your function be named something that, you know, it makes sense. Like if I have a mathematical function that's, I guess, I don't know, finds the square root of a number, you could name it find square root of a number. Something that makes sense to what your function will do. So I'm going to have a void add 1, and then we're going to have parameters or arguments. So right here in the parentheses, you can have as many variables as you want, or sorry, parameters, but you need to designate the type that it is. So when I mean type, I mean data type. So if I want to take in an integer value, I can do that. If I want to take in a string, I can do that as well. You know, whatever I want. Let's take in 2 integers. How about that? Okay, and semicolon as always. And so this basically completes sorry, the function prototype. And actually here, after these data types, you can have placeholder variables. These aren't required. Some people like to have them. I guess just it depends on the person. You could have like an x here, or no, let's name this num1, and the second integer variable num2. So again, this is optional. One thing that is required though is, you'll see down here at line 14 when I write this, when you make your actual function, the function body, we're going to have to repeat this, the return type, the title, and these parameters here. You need to have these parameter names, these variable names. So if I do it down here, you can see my function is add 1, return type is void, okay. Oops, sorry, no semicolon here, just curly brackets. This is where the function code goes. Then right here, you want to repeat your parameter types. It's going to be 2 integers. You need to specify a variable name. So if I do this, you'll notice I get an error here. Oops, it says function1 overload. Function definition for add 1 not found. The definition is right here. That's what we're doing at line 14. So you'll notice it's not found because this one only takes 1 integer. It's not even defined, really. There's no prototype for it. So to find this, you need to match it with your function prototype. So this is where the variables come in. These are actually required. Oops, let me do this num1 and num2. And so you'll see that this warning goes away. So this function prototype is for this one down here, our void add 1. Okay, so now we can fill out our function. So what do we want it to do? We want to add 1 to the numbers, right? I can can do this. I can do num1 equals num1 plus 1. We're adding 1 to it. Num2 equals num2 plus 1. And then, like I said, we don't want to do a return type. We're not going to return anything, so we're just going to have all our data here. So one thing you could do is later on down the road, you could return values. You could return these values, or you could just do something with the values here. So, I mean, if you want to show it to the user, you could do a simple cout. We'll do it here for now. I'm going to change this later on so you guys can see what you can do with functions, but just for now, I'm going to, we'll just display the values here. Num1 and num2. And the line, we can do this, actually, let's do this. Value for num1. We can do num1 line, and let me just copy this up here. Okay, so we have it set up so that it's going to add 1 to each of these numbers, and then we're going to display it to the user, right? And so to activate this function, you're going to call it. So what that means is I'm going to basically just type in the name of the function, which is add1, after a semicolon. That's it. So that calls it, but you'll notice there's an error here. It's because, remember, this function takes in 2 arguments. It takes in 2 integers. Also, the order that you're feeding the parameters in matters. So if this one's a little more, I don't want to say deceptive, but it could be if you mess up because they're both integers. So you want to make sure you're passing in your numbers to the right parts and using them from the right variables. Because what if you wanted to use number 2 for something, but instead you passed it into number 1? Right, so now you're using the wrong numbers, so you need to be careful for that too. Or say I had, we can change this up here for a sec, if this function took in an integer and a string. Okay, the data types that you pass in here, the variable data types, they have to match the order of how it's listed out in the function prototype. So I'll just change this back to int. That was just for a demonstration. Now I can pass in an integer like, say, int x equals 1, and we can do int y equals 2. So this is going to represent the 2 variables we're going to pass in. Now to pass them in, you'll notice I wrote an integer here. You don't have to specify the type for when you're calling the function. It's already specified here. It's going to know. Your job is to just pass in the right variables of the right type. So we have our 2 ints here. We don't need to specify the data type. We just need to pass in variables that are of the right type, like this. So if I pass in a string, if I made this y a string value instead, we're going to get an error here. You can see it. No suitable conversion function from string to integer exists, right? So make sure your variable types match. Okay, so to repeat, oh, and one more thing, it's a return type void, so, well, I'll show you that later, but if I was returning an integer, I could do something like this. Int return value is equal to whatever this function returns. But I'll show you that after this. So for now, let's just execute this. So this should add 1 to both of these. Let's see. So this should be number 1 should equal 2, and y should equal 3. Now if I run this, oh, what's wrong here? Int num1 expected. I don't know why that's fucking up. I'm pretty sure that's wrong. Yeah, it's wrong. Weird. Okay, so you'll see here. Passed in x, which is 1, passed in y, which is 2, So remember, x is num1, y is num2. So we add 1 to x, which is 2, and we add 1 to number 2, which is 3. You'll see it in the console here, value for your numbers. So that's it, that's right. Okay, next is return types. So you can return whatever variable type you want. You can be an integer or a string, or I guess for this one we'll do string. Actually, yeah, fuck it, let's just do a string. So I'll change the types up here. So changing it from void to string, because now we want to return something, specifically a string type. So down here at the end, we can just type in the keyword return, and then we could have like a string variable that we want. We can just type in like a string of characters, and that would return it since it's of the same type. I guess to make it obvious and easier, we can do this. Do string. Let's see, string. String value. Let's just do return. Let's see. String success. I'll make this complicated. I'll do this. If nah, never mind. I lied. Let's see, string word equals returning. Now let's do function called, or we could do success. So then I'm going to return this value word. Now it's very important that your return types match the return type here. So I'm returning word, which is the type string, and it matches, so that's good. And then up here, I can do this. String shows the return value from the add1 function. We can just name it return value equals add1. That should be good. And I don't know why this is throwing a rod. Very weird. But disregard this. This is all right. And then up here, I can see out the return value. So now this function is going to do the same thing, add the numbers. It's going to return this string type, which is a success. And we're going to store it in this return value here. So after this add1 function gets called, the return value is a string stored in the string variable. It should be the type, or sorry, it should be the value is called success. We're going to see it out right here. So you'll see it if I run it. Added the numbers. Yep, it says success. So that's right. I don't know why this is throwing an error. So weird. Anyway, that's a general understanding of functions. There was another thing. There's things called pass by value and pass by reference. So what this is doing, this is pass by value. It's pretty self-explanatory. You're literally passing in objects by value. One thing about that is you're making a copy of the data as you pass it in, so it is wasting memory. Another drawback to passing by value like this, you can only have one return type. So like if I wanted to return, you know, whatever, maybe just this number one, I can do it right here actually. So I can change it back to integer up here too. I'll delete this. Oops, sorry. Let's return num1. So, this return type here too should be int. Okay. So if I am passing in parameters by value to a function, it's going to copy this data, so we're wasting memory. That's one thing. Two, I can only return one thing from the function if I do that. So if I wanted to get multiple things out of a function, you would have to pass by reference. But in this case, we're just passing by value. So I'll show you here. If we're, let's see, what are we returning? Num1. Num1 is x is equal to 1, so this is just going to return 2 here. So return value should equal 2. I'm going to run it. And you'll see here that the return value is 2. Okay, let me write this out so it's more clear. Return value. Okay. So if you wanted to get multiple things by reference, to return multiple things, you have to pass by reference. So passing by reference, what it does is it doesn't copy the data. It doesn't waste space. You're actually changing, you're going to be changing these actual variables here, x and y. So you're going to be changing the same memory location that these are stored in. So imagine when I was passing by value, I had x and y. I made another copy of x and y after returning, so that these ones here in main, they don't get changed. They're going to stay the same. If I pass by reference, these values will change. So if I pass in x by reference and then y by reference, so if I had these same numbers here, 1 and 2, if I added 1 to both of them, so respectively x would become 2 and 3. If I were to, I guess, use x and y here in main after calling the function, you'll see that their values have changed. So I can do that here too. I can show you. See out. Let's do it like this. After add 1 function, do x after add 1 function, display the value of x. Just copy this here, do the same thing for y. Change it here. Here I can do this, make it a little more specific so y'all can see. We'll do x inside add 1 function and line. Oops, typos. Do the same thing for y. Okay. And when you can still have your return type too. So let's actually change this. Let's make this a bool. Usually you'll return a bool if you want to like show a success, true or false, you know, from a function if it was executed properly. It's a good way to check your code. So we'll do this here. Bool. Or sorry, not bool. Just return true once it's done, because we'll know that all this is executed. Okay, so it looks good. And then here I'll show you that we're gonna manipulate x and y here. So we can add 1 to it again. Actually, we can do x equals x plus 1 and y equals y plus 1. So that means inside the function when I call it, x is going to be equal to 1. No, it's going to be equal to 2 because we're adding 1 to 1. Y is going to be equal to 3. And I'm going to return here. This value is going to be true, so you're going to see here from the return statement, the return value is going to say true, or it might just be 1 in this case. But then here you're going to see that x is equal to x plus 1, so that should be, this is going to be 3 now, and y is going to be 4. Because you're going to see that inside the function, or actually, you know what, to make it easier, let's just not even change it. So before in main, you would see that when I returned these values, it was just 1 and 2. If I pass it by reference, these values are going to change as well. They're going to equal whatever this function did to it inside. One thing you also have to do up here to pass by reference, you use the ampersand sign. You just follow it after your variables. Do this. So this and sign, this ampersand, after your parameter types is going to say, hey, I want to pass this variable in by reference. So if I wanted to pass one variable in by reference, then you could do that as well. That would mean only, in this case, x would change, the first parameter, because it's the only one being passed by reference, and not y. But I'll do it to both. And then down here, you also need to specify that as well. Oops, not that. Ampersand. There we go. Okay. So now if I run it, there you go. So inside the add 1 function, we added 1 to x, we added 1 to y, respectively it's 2 and 3. You'll see that it also changed x and y here, 2 and 3, but it didn't make new copies of it. It's the same variables x and y. It's editing the same location where x and y is stored. Okay, and you'll also see the return value is 1 because we returned true. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So now, I mean, if I wanted to, I could have a multitude of variables and then get those back. If you pass in an array to a function, like this, if I just close this, you can pass in an array like this. All you gotta do is use these brackets, and that'll designate that you're passing in an array. And arrays are always passed in by reference, not by value. So that is one thing to know. So if I change the array in the function here, it's going to be reflected in main as well. So that's just some things to note. That's just a general understanding of functions. I hope you guys took away a lot from this. So yeah, functions are great. Use them to organize your code, make more specific areas in your code. You don't have to repeat lines either. You can just call this function wherever you wanted to. So I can even call this function within another function. So yeah, they're pretty cool and useless. Not useless, useful. It's late at night here. I'm freaking tired. Okay. So that's it. Enjoy, guys. Peace.